Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today, instead of giving a hot take review on a game we just finished playing, we're going to talk about our top 5 crowdfunded games for the last year. And this is kind of a special episode because when we started this podcast a little over 2 years ago, the very first non-review episode we did, the first special episode we did, was about our top 5 incoming Kickstarter games. So we did that 2 years ago. And then a year ago, we did our top 5 incoming Kickstarter games for 2021. So this is our third annual top 5 incoming crowdfunded game Kickstarters. Did you notice what is different there? Did you guys hear something different?
There's something else besides just Kickstarters?
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So this year, a pretty big new game crowdfunding platform called Gamefound came out. And there's been a number of high profile games up on that platform this year. So used to Kickstarter was the only real player in the room. Now there's some competition. So we're going to kick off this week with a poll just about that topic. And then we'll get in and talk about some of our successes or failures from the last couple of years, as well as get into this year's games that we're most excited about receiving from crowdfunding. Before I get into the poll, though, really quick, just some quick news. I was just invited to be a guest on the Boards Alive podcast, which is a really fun Canadian podcast I've been listening to for like 5 years. And so I was excited to be included on that. That episode just dropped on Sunday, which would have been right before this episode releases. So if you haven't heard it yet, go out and check that out. I hope you enjoy it. We had a lot of fun talking about a couple games, including one that I talked about for the first time and I really liked. So check that out. All right, so let's talk about the poll. Now, I kind of messed up. I forgot to ask a poll question this week until about 30 minutes before we started recording. So I put out on Twitter, I put out an emergency poll question, and we got, within 30 minutes, we got 29 votes on it. So we still got some response on it. The poll closed just a few minutes ago. And the poll that I asked, by the way, if you don't follow us on Twitter, check us out at BG_hot takes, because every week we ask a poll and we talk about it on the show, and we read some of our listeners' responses. So if you want to be a part of the show, if you want to have some input into what we're reading on air, then come out to Twitter and join us there. Here's what I asked. Where have you crowdfunded board games this year? And the options I gave were Kickstarter, Gamefound, both or other, or neither. I probably didn't need to say both or other, but I figured somebody probably put something out on like BackerKit or I don't know, some like random platform somewhere, and then they're going to call me out in the comments. So I figured I'd just save the trouble. The results were like this, but I'm going to tell you right now that the results were bad. Our followers, our Twitter followers, our listeners don't know how to answer polls, and it was quite clear today. Here's what they said. 34% said Kickstarter, 10% said Gamefound, 41% said both or other, and 15% said neither. Now, I suspect that this happened because it was an emergency poll. People got excited. They felt they had to jump in. But 3 people commented that they accidentally clicked Kickstarter when they meant to say both or other. So the results would be a little bit lower on Kickstarter, a little bit higher on both. And Adam's shaking his head at me right now like he doesn't care. But are you shaking your head at me or at them?
So I disappointed in you, Tim, with this poll here. They're usually so scientific and well crafted. This one has just let me down. An emergency poll, misworded. How dare you?
No, it wasn't misworded. My poll was fine.
Personally, I like this freewheeling style of polstering.
Anyway, so how would you guys have answered that if you'd seen the poll? I'm sure you didn't. But have you backed on Gamefound yet? Have you backed on both platforms?
I have done a Gamefound one, and it's kind of a cheat. I think I don't want to say what it is. We'll talk about it when I get to the game. I'm pretty sure it gets confusing, right? Because some games you can back them on Kickstarter, and then the pledge manager is Gamefound. That's how Gamefound got started.
Yeah.
So if I did a late pledge, and then I had to do the late pledge on what's it called?
Gamefound.
On Gamefound, I had to do a late pledge on Gamefound, but it was originally Kickstarted, and then it gets a little gray area. So it can be confusing.
I know the game you're talking about. That was a Kickstarter. That was a Kickstarter back, and you just did the pledge manager.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
For me, it's been primarily Kickstarter. And the only reason for that, though, is that I kind of cut back dramatically on my crowdfunding right before Gamefound became like a big new power. So I do have one game from Gamefound. The rest are all Kickstarter. but that's not for any particular reason. It's just the way things shook out.
How do you guys like Gamefound, or what you've seen of it? Do you feel like it's an improvement on the crowdfunding platform, or is it no different?
I think more than anything, I like that there's some competition for Kickstarter. So I will browse Gamefound and take a look and see what they have. I think some of the publishers that we like, Anachronies and the Voidfalls, Awakened Realms, I think are leaning towards Gamefound a little more. So that's going to bring me over to that site a little more often. And there's a few publishers I know are shying away from Kickstarter for whatever reason. So yeah, I'm definitely going to have my eyes on Gamefound. It seems like a nice competitor and an okay interface.
I think that Awakened Realms actually owns Gamefound, doesn't it?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, which is interesting. Pretty clever that they put that out there, because they first did the pledge manager. I forget what it's called, the backer kit, I think is what it's called. But they first started making their backer kit thing just to support their own pledges, and then kind of took it from there, because Kickstarter wasn't really evolving too much. The interesting thing is I do like what Gamefound's done. There's some good stuff about it. Like, I like that, when it's time to go, like, put in your address and close out your backing thing, you just log into Gamefound and you can just do it there. One of my biggest frustrations with like Kickstarter is that you don't actually do the funding, or you don't like do the payments there. So they usually send you to some external site, and then like, okay, go fill out the backer, whatever it's called, like the backer form, or, go put in your address or check your address. And I have to go find an email from 6 months ago, click on a link, try to log in, get a reset password, see if I can get in. So Gamefound's made that a lot easier to just go in and like check my address and close out my late backing.
Oh, Tim, when you asked what the differences were, or what differences we liked or didn't like, I couldn't actually put my finger on any until you said that. And man, what a nightmare that was, because I actually was in the process of moving across the country, which meant being on the road for 8 months, right when I had a whole bunch of Kickstarters that were coming due. In fact, I think 4 or 5 of them actually came in and went to my brother's house in Connecticut while I was on the road. And so I was constantly getting these notes about, hey, make sure your address is up to date. And so there I am, this whole 8 months, constantly going back and trying to find old emails. And sometimes I could find them, sometimes I couldn't. Oh, man, it drove me crazy.
Yeah. So I like that a lot about Gamefound. But the other interesting thing is, even though the interface seems nice enough, I've gotten familiar with Kickstarter now. And so I find it a little bit harder to read a Gamefound, kind of like how the whole thing works. Like, what are the pledge levels? Like, because I'm an old man and I just don't change well. I don't take change well. So it's harder for me to get in and like kind of understand a campaign at Gamefound at this point. But they seem to be continuing to add features and improving on things. So maybe that'll get a little bit better over time. There weren't too many comments on the poll, other than just people telling me that they clicked the wrong button there. But I did have one funny one. Brian Schindler, who's a regular listener, he said, "I have no desire to pay for a game that I won't receive for many months. I can wait for retail." And I totally agree with him, right? And this is like, I message this all the time, and yet I backed more crowdfunded games this year than any year in the past. And so I said, I keep saying this. Why can't I follow my own rules? And as another listener says, metal first player tokens. Yep, that's why I keep backing Kickstarters.
Indeed.
A few other comments out there. Usually I give a full day for results, so there's usually a lot of comments. Really recommend checking out. If you don't follow us on Twitter, come find us out there. All right, so since we're talking about Kickstarter, this is a great opportunity to jump in and think back to how Kickstarters have been for us. Now, 2 full years ago, and this will be our 3rd version of this episode, but 2 full years ago, we asked the question, what are the 5 Kickstarter games that you're most excited to receive? And last year we even did like a scorecard about how those scored and everything. We're not going to go through all that, but I am just curious. I mean, it's been 2 full years. Are there any games from that first episode that you guys have still not received?
I have received all of mine. What about you, Chris?
I have not received all of mine. I actually have one that's still outstanding. And it's so frustrating because it's one that I'm so excited about. And that is Dawn of Madness by Dimension Games. That was funded back in December of 2019. It was originally expected to deliver I'm saying with air quotes, in October of 2021. Later, they came back and revised that to October 2022. And here it is rolling up on October 2022. And I just got an update email today where they're saying, well, really, it's actually going to take longer. They're still doing development, for God's sake. They're not even done developing this game yet. They're still tweaking rules. They're still writing story pieces.
Oh, goodness.
I will not lie. I am still super excited about this game. But man, what a frustrating experience that is, that we're going back to December 2019 and this thing still hasn't delivered yet.
this is the Kickstarter nightmare, right? This is the crowdfund nightmare. This is why I always say that I'm so like against Kickstarter, regardless of my actual habits. The small publishers that are actually trying to put a game out for the first time, this is pretty much what I think you can expect. I mean, obviously, this is probably a bigger game, so it's probably a worst case scenario. But like, this is what you're likely to expect. And the sad thing is, Chris, you're going to wait for another year, 2 years. Maybe they run out of money. Maybe it actually delivers. I'm not betting too high on how good the game is. Now, I know you're excited about it. Hopefully, it's awesome for you. Hopefully, you love it. But the reality is, these guys didn't know what they were doing. That's why it's taken so long in the first place.
Yeah, I think this is pretty unusual, though, that this level of development still to come happened.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they did it here, but I mean, this is going to either be the greatest game ever, or I'm going to throw it out the freaking window when it comes, because this has been a thorn in my side for a while. Now, I will say, this is not the only game that's that old that hasn't delivered yet. This just happened to be the one that was on my list, but I'll talk more about the others later.
A couple points I want to make, Tim. I think you're a little harsh on these indie publishers. There's been a lot of failures, but there's been some successes too with these smaller publishers. I've had a lot of fun backing some of these games from the smaller guys. And a lot of them do deliver. A lot of them don't. Like Chris said, I have had some that just didn't make the list last year that are still outstanding from even before that list. So 2 of them I've talked about, and Chris knows what I'm going to say here. That's Cthulhu Wars, Daemon, Sultan, and Hyperspace. Both games by Peterson's Games has been an epic disaster and just very disappointing all around. I've talked about in previous episodes. You can check that out if you want to. But also the other game I want to mention was Sweet Mess. Expected delivery way back in December 2018. This is the nightmare situation, Tim, that you were talking about. It's happening to me. The game's called Sweet Mess. Guys, let me tell you what, that Kickstarter has been an unsavory disaster.
Has it been a hot mess?
It's been disgusting. You don't want to look at it. It smells gross. Guy Fieri would be unhappy. British guy would be yelling. Angry kitchen guy. It'd be a disaster for this game.
Well, I appreciate the wordplay, Adam. That was not an unsavory disaster. I also have one from 2 years ago that was on my top 5 incoming, Kickstarter list, and it's the only game that I still have outstanding from that era, even. And that is not from a tiny publisher, although I guess it is not a huge publisher, but it's a publisher that's made a lot of money and sold a lot of games. And that is Frosthaven. This is, of course, from Childress Cephalofair Games, the makers of Gloomhaven. This was the sequel to that. I'm not even sure whether I'm excited or not about it. Like, there's something about it that still gets me excited. I played Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, and I kind of was like, okay, this tactical combat Euro style game is not for me. So I probably will skip on this. And I tried to give it away, and then I ended up like feeling bad about the person I gave it away to, and so I gave him a gift card instead. But I kind of want to bust it open and just see what's changed. Like, what's new, what's fresh. Okay, Adam, you still have this one coming too, right?
Yeah, Tim, I do. This is one I totally forgot about. It's been so long since I've heard anything about it, or I haven't even expected it to come, and I've just put it out of my life because I don't ever expect it to get here. So that's why I didn't mention it. I totally forgot about it.
Yeah, they actually are giving like monthly updates on it, and it sounds like finally that the first crates or whatever they are, the first cargo containers are on ships coming across the ocean right now. But they've got like something like 25 containers that are going to come over like 4 months. So, you could get this delivered in a couple months, or it could be like 6 to 8 months or something like that. So it's going to be ways out before everyone has their copy of this. It looks like it's finally going to get here. They're done with production. It's being shipped out. Yeah, we'll see. I'm interested. I think I'm going to bust it open because I'm tempted. Like, do I just leave it in the wrapping and give it away to sell it to somebody before I open it? I think I'm going to open it up, and at least I can talk about it on the show and just, kind of let you guys know what I think about it from that experience.
I probably will too, right? After all the hype, the biggest funded Kickstarter game of all time, might as well open it up and see what it's all about and see how many crazy mystery boxes are in. It's going to be cool for sure. All
right, cool. So then last year we did another episode. We did our top 5 incoming Kickstarters from 2021. And so we're going to spend a little more time on those. We're going to go down that list from 5 down to 1 and just ask the question, like, have you received it? And if you have, what did you think about it? Let's just talk really quickly about the ones we were excited about last year. And I'm going to start off here. My number 5 from 2021 was a game called Artisans of Splendent Vale. This is by Nikki Valens. And this was their first self-published game, I believe, kind of their first breakaway from Fantasy Flight Games. Maybe not. They may have put out some other games, but this was a big Kickstarter game that they put out last year. So here's an interesting story about this. When we did this episode last year, I had just backed it. It was the Kickstarter still had 2 weeks left to go, and I ended up canceling my backing. So I haven't received it. Now, my understanding is that the production's done. It's being delivered. Maybe it's being shipped or it's close to being shipped or something like that. Can't say anything else about it. There's 2 reasons why I decided not to back it ultimately. All the stuff that I said about it last year, I was a little hesitant, but kind of excited. I got to watch a little bit of gameplay as the campaign was close to ending. And I realized that it was a tactical combat game, kind of another Gloomhaven type thing. And that's just really not my thing. So that's, I mentioned that with Frosthaven. So I just decided, the gameplay is not going to be that great for me. And then secondly, the same week we played Voidfall on Tabletop Simulator. And that was another, these are both big box, like expensive Kickstarters. And I got really excited about that when I said, well, I don't think that Artisans is going to be a great game for me. I think Voidfall is. So I canceled Artisans. I backed Voidfall. So that was a big miss on my part to not even actually having backed it, even though I talked about it on my list last year. What about you, Adam? What was your number 5 last year, and how's it gone for you?
My number 5 last year was CoraQuest by Dan Hughes and his daughter, Cora. They self-published it, and it arrived. But I opened it up. I haven't dug it out. My daughter hasn't seemed too interested in playing it. So it's just been sitting there. CoraQuest, that was my number 5.
Do you think you're going to try to get her to play it, or?
We'll see. Maybe one day I'll have it dangling around and see if it entices anybody. If there's any interest at all, we'll open it up and see what happens.
Yeah. All right. Good luck.
Ouch. That didn't sound like a ringing endorsement.
Did something about opening it turn you off of it, or did you just not, not get in the mood?
No, I think it's supposed to be a solid game. It just hasn't felt right. I haven't felt right yet to get it out on the table and try it. I got it to play with my daughter and kind of march around in this dungeon kind of environment that looks fun. It has really fun animation. At least a lot of the art was submitted by kids and then touched up by professional artists. So it still has that kid feel to it. It looks like a lot of romping around, adventure style, super inclusive. So at some point, I'm sure this game will make an appearance and I'll have a report on it, but I don't want to just try to force feed it to the kids and have them lash back at it.
Well, my number 5, actually, before I get to my number 5, I just have to give one honorable mention from my list of frustration that we finished a few minutes ago. And that was the Star Realms Nova Collection by Wise Wizard Games, which would have been on my what a bummer I didn't get this, except I just got it this week. This is a game that funded in January 2020. It was expected in November 2020, ha ha ha. And here it got to me in September 2022. So it got here, so it didn't quite make the list of shame, but it was pretty doggone close to it.
Was it worth the wait, Chris? Have you opened it up, and what do you think?
It's not something I was waiting for to play, because I play Star Realms all the time. This is more like my museum piece. I want to have the big box with all the stuff. But I think what you're getting at is, did it seem reasonable for it to have taken as long as it did? I think the answer to that is probably no. It was a giant box with a big bunch of cards in it, all of which already exist. I don't think there was much, if any, in the way of new artwork. They basically took old cards and they added foil to them. And it looks great. I mean, it's a terrific looking game, but it's not even like all the expansions. It's a relatively small subset of the expansions. So no, I'd have to say it did not seem like something that ought to have taken as long as it did.
So let me ask you about the foiling, Chris, because I really like foiling on cards, and you don't see this very often. This was a big hit when Magic the Gathering did this many years ago. And one of the cool things that they did with foiling is they didn't just put foiling on the borders, but sometimes they would integrate the foiling into the artworks. Like if there was a fire explosion on the card, you'd get to see that the fire explosion would be foily. And then when Red Rising did foil, I was excited about that, and they looked really cool, but it was a little disappointing just because the foiling was just on the borders. It was cool, but it wasn't part of the artwork. Did Star Realms kind of, reproduce that Magic the Gathering magic where they made you feel like you're looking at this card and it's a little bit more interactive, it's a little bit holographic? How did the foiling turn out here?
It's great. I will give them that. They did a great job with the foiling. Anybody who's played Star Realms on the app, and you can get the foil cards on there where you turn them and it looks like there's a little bit of motion. They did that. That is the full-on treatment that these cards got. And it's really beautiful. I think it's really terrific. So if you like foiling on your cards, and you like Star Realms, this is a great way to do that.
Hold on, Chris. So you're on an iPhone, right? So you're telling me on Star Realms app, when you move your phone, it's like that little dimensional foil card?
No. On the app, you can win these foil cards. I think you actually buy them now too, which seems kind of silly to me. But by playing the arenas, you can get these foil cards. You have some. You have some of them.
On mine, all they do, it just looks like an animation, kind of like a GIF that sort of just lights up. But you're saying on yours, you can rotate it and it's like an actual foil card?
I think kind of like that. I mean, the foiling makes it look like there's some motion or some
Okay.
dynamism, dynamicness, whatever the right word is, to the cards. So it's not exactly
Gotcha.
like the ones, those old cards where you turn them and there's somebody actually like moving or something like that. But it does have that illusion of movement,
Yeah.
at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suspect that's what took so long here, to be honest, because I bet, Wizards of the Coast is a huge company. They have this type of thing figured out and they did it years ago and keep doing it with Magic the Gathering. So with Wise Wizard, right, they're doing this for the first time. And I bet it's more complicated of a process than you think it is to kind of figure out where to insert the foiling into the art and make sure that it turns out okay and make sure that the cards, don't like they. So I wonder if it ended up spending a lot of time having to figure out where to overlay that foiling. And then maybe they got production samples and they were like crappy quality. And so they had to go back to the factory. And I bet there's more technical complexity to that process than they expected and that you would expect because it's just cards. But that might be a good reason why it took a lot longer.
That may very well be true. And the updates they sent periodically always did talk about that.
Yeah.
So that's probably the case. But so back to my actual answer. I never even got to my number 5. So sorry for that little distracted frolic there. So my number 5 last year, and I'm going to try to stop myself from saying too much about this, but it was Hyperspace by Peterson Games, which is the same damn thing that Adam was just talking about. So remember a few minutes ago, I was talking about Dawn of Madness and how crazy it was that one funded in December of 2019 and was expected in 2021, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess when Hyperspace funded? That was January of 2019, almost 4 freaking years ago. And they are still, and actually now that one's on the back burner because they've done this thing where they ran out of money and now they're trying to do one game at a time. And I've got 2 games, the other one being the Demon Sultan, just like what Adam talked about. And they're going to do that one first. So Hyperspace is on who knows when the hell that's going to come out. It may be 5-6 years. I don't know. Maybe never. So whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Whatever.
All right. So moving on, my number 4 was One Deck Galaxy. This is by Azadi Games. And I'm really excited about this one still. And it looks like it's close. Like they've asked us to kind of finish the backer kits on it. I think it's going to be, I think it's in shipping at this point, and I think it's going to be delivered in the coming months. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it was a little slower than expected. I don't remember what the original target date was on it, but the production looks good from what I've seen from some of the pictures they've sent in the updates. And I think this will replace One Deck Dungeon for me. So excited to try it. Hopefully this will be kind of my solo like travel game to replace One Deck Dungeon. But I loved One Deck Dungeon. I can't wait to try some of the campaign stuff and the new things that they added to this game.
I don't want to say much about that because that might be on one of my lists later on, Tim. But I'm really happy with the space game that arrived more recently. This would have been on one of my lists, but it's already here. Age of Galaxy that we tried at TimCon. That is an awesome small box one for me.
Nice.
But that's not number 4 on my list. Number 4 is They Live from 1 year ago. That is this game I talked about. It just arrived as well. It's on my table. It's underneath the toppers. It's all spread out with all this stuff. Big old map of LA, all these character cards, all these little case files and whatnots. I'm excited to dig into this one. The production alone gets me hyped. Just the silly theme of it. You're walking around LA trying to find these aliens that can only be revealed when you put on these sunglasses. And it just sounds goofy, wacky, co-op fun time. We'll see how the gameplay is. I hope it's good. I hope there's something there. I'm not expecting too much, but I think at least it'll be fun to dig through and relive the movie.
That just sounds so fun.
Are you planning to play this with Sarah, or are you just going to try to play this yourself, Adam, like solo?
I'll probably just do it solo. If Sarah's interested, I'm not going to say you can't play. It's just for me, but I don't think she has any interest in doing it at all. So I think this is going to be an Adam only activity.
She's not a big Roddy Piper fan.
Maybe she is. We just haven't talked about it, but maybe
all
she
right,
is.
We'll report back once you actually get it played, and let's see how it worked out for you.
I will.
My number 4 was Canvas by Road to Infamy Games. That is, I got that one. It came and it was as delightful as I thought it was going to be. It's got a very nice production. I like the little canvas playmat and the cards. They're so much fun. We've talked about this one a bunch, so I won't get into it here in any great detail. But that is one that delivered, and I think it was pretty close to delivering on time. So a good experience there.
Chris, do you regret not getting the expansion?
No, I think the base copy is enough
Yeah.
for me. I mean, this isn't going to be one of my constant go-to games. It's a fun diversion, but it's not the kind of thing that I'm going to bust out for a real, for a big game night. It's fun for people who, if people I'm playing with that don't play games regularly, or if I want something quick, or if my wife and I want to do something light. But I don't think I need the expansion for that.
Reminder, listeners, you do not need to go all in on crowdfunded games. All right. Well, my number 3 was Paperback Adventures. This is a Tim Fowers game, and it hasn't been delivered yet, but it's close. It looks like they just had us finish the, kind of backer kit or whatever. So I think this is going to be delivered in the coming months. So I haven't gotten a chance to play it. Still looking forward to it. We'll see how it goes. This is a solo only game for me. In fact, I think it was made to be a solo only game originally, and it could either be a blast or it could be a big letdown, but that's okay. I'll sell it. That's Paperback Adventures.
I thought that one looked pretty neat, Tim. I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about that one or trying it too.
Cool.
My number 3 was Chaosmos, The Temple. This is a game by Joey Vigor, and I think his own publishing company. I think it's just Vigor Games, his own publishing company. This is a local guy in LA. I'd heard about this game before. It has this thing where you're trying to find the Ovid, right? You want to be the guy that ends up with the Ovid at the end of the game. You can stash it on these planets in these secret envelopes. And then when you want to go explore these planets, you take the envelope and you go over to the closet so nobody can see you, and you pull out, and then only you get to know the information about what's at that specific planet. Then you can put some of your cards in there. You could put a trap in there. You could put a bomb in there. You could, if the Ovid isn't Ovoid or Ovid, whatever it's called, if it's in there, you can take it out, and that can be in your deck of cards, and that makes it susceptible to other players can come and take that from you. So it's this reverse hot potato situation where you want to have the Ovid, the Ovoid in your hand at the end of the game, and after it's your turn, you stomp on this clock and it ticks down, and there's one less turn left at the game. You want to time it just right so you have that thing in your hand at the end of the game. Sounds like a blast. I heard it's a really fun game. I'm looking forward to when this one delivers, but he's had a bit of trouble. I think he's like I said, he's on his own. He's an independent. He's changed factories, the fabricators of the molds and stuff, I think at least once. So that set him back, and then something else set him back. There's been a slew of emails about why it hasn't delivered yet. So I think he's trying. This hasn't fully slumped into Peterson Games territory for me yet, but on Kickstarter, you get the happy face, the face, or the angry face. This one's in the face territory for me right now.
Okay.
That's Chaosmos, The Temple.
Who could have predicted that would have gone poorly, Adam?
Yeah, and what a bummer. I mean, you're like stuffing eggs and bombs and stuff into envelopes. I can't wait to hear about this one when it finally does arrive.
This one's going to be fun.
This is the one last year where Chris looked it up, and he's like, there's like a bird wearing sunglasses, pushing a contraption.
There's like a shopping cart involved in this thing. I don't even know. So my number 3 was Distilled by Paverson Games. This funded in July 2021, and it wasn't expected until December of this year. So there is still time to deliver on this one, and I'm still equally excited about it. This is actually one I think that I listed as my most anticipated game back a little while ago. We were invited to submit clips to Board Game Barrage, and they gave people's most anticipated games of the upcoming year, and this is the one that I listed. And I'm still excited about it. Hasn't gotten here yet, but they're not late yet.
Yeah, looks fun. I mean, looks fun, sounds fun. Interested to try this one out when you get it, Chris. So good luck. All right, my number 2 was Now or Never. This was a little bit of a cheat last year because I didn't actually have 5 crowdfunded games, but this was a pre-order from Red Raven Games. So you did have to pre-order before anyone had played it. I think they were still wrapping up development or starting production. I did get this one delivered. It got delivered a couple months later than they had originally planned, but I did get it. I had a chance to play it, played it up like 11 or 12 times. And it's a pretty interesting and pretty fun game. I did ultimately move it out of my collection. I sent it to our friend Riley Stock because he was interested in trying it. And I think mainly just because I found it to be a little bit of a clunky solo experience, which is the main way I expected to play it. And as far as like a Red Raven game in the world of Azarium or whatever it is, I like Near and Far a little bit more. So I kept Near and Far in my collection, and I moved Now or Never out. It's an interesting game. I think it's more fun competitive. I did get to play it competitive one time. Interesting game, kind of heavy mechanisms, fairly heavy rule set to be a little bit thematic. It's an interesting Euro with some weird tableau building, a little bit of exploration going on. Cool game. Glad I got a chance to play it, but it wasn't a keeper for me.
Well, one from a year ago that I'm not sure will be a keeper once it gets here is Shasn Azadi. And I think I'm saying that right. Shasn space Azadi. This is a game by Zane Mimone, Abhishek Lamba, and published by Memesys Culture Club. This is out of India. So I watched some of the videos. I got hyped on it. It looks like a beautiful production. And what you're doing is you are playing as a different political party with different interests. And there's a bit of area control. You're trying to gerrymander and manipulate the voters so you can get elected and you can push your agenda. That all sounds pretty neat to me. I'm a little worried about how it's executed. It seems like you kind of lose that theme in some of the execution, which is a little bit sad. But I don't know. It looks so neat to me, and the different decks you can play, the different type of revolutions and the political implications. Maybe it'll tell a story here. I hope so. I'm a little worried about it, but I guess I will find out optimistically in February 2023. I haven't been keeping up too much with the updates on this one. I'm falling in the camp of guys who try not to pay attention to Kickstarter updates because lately they're more depressing than uplifting. So that is Shasn Azadi.
Adam, I'm sorry this one dropped down on your list because this is one that I remember you talking about it, and I thought it sounded absolutely fascinating. I was dying to hear how this game turns out. So I'm hoping that your impression is wrong, that it actually ends up not being mediocre. So it sounds like a really cool idea, and just having something coming, a game coming from India, it sounds like there's going to be some stuff, probably some ideas in there that we don't see on our day-to-day games around here. So I'm excited to hear what ends up coming out of that.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see.
So my number 2 is Robot Quest Arena from Wise Wizard Games. This one was funded back in June of 2021 with an expected delivery date at the time of May 2022, which has passed now, but passed not too long ago, so it's not crazily out of date. But that is also one that I believe is getting close to shipping or has already shipped. So it's one it's in the hopper. It's not going to be too far away. It doesn't seem like it's going to be way, way, way out of date. Basically, it's like a deck building game that also has a little tactical robots moving around on a board. And it just looks like a ton of fun. I'm still excited about that one. It's not on my list for this year, but I'm still looking forward to it. I love me some deck builders, and this one's not too late yet, so I'm not yet irritated at Wise Wizard for Robot Quest Arena.
Yeah, hopefully they got a little bit better at their Kickstarter fulfillment since the Star Realms Deluxe Master set or whatever it's called. But yeah, this game looks cute and fun. And I remember we even talked about this a few episodes back. Like, hey, Chris, did you back this? I forget we talked about it last year. So that's funny.
Yeah.
All right. My number 1 game that I was excited about last year in 2021 was the Everdell, Newleaf, and Mistwood expansions. And they have a big box collection with it. And this is late. It's very late. I think 3 previous Kickstarters I got from them all delivered ahead of schedule, the original game and the 2 previous expansion sets. So I was looking forward to getting this ahead of schedule. They did have a change of staff that kind of ran the Starling Games fulfillment and Kickstarter division. And that probably slowed things down a little bit. But people are starting to get their copies right now. I've seen some pictures come in. Guys, this box for Everdell is larger than the Gloomhaven box. It's amazing.
Wow.
It looks like it has amazing storage kit in there with like nice plastic trays you pull out. You don't have to put anything in baggies, all this stuff, everything that I want for Everdell. I'm so excited for this still, and it should be here hopefully within the next couple of months. Maybe I'll get it. I could be getting it in the next few days. It sounds like in North America, people are going to be getting it over the next few weeks. So I'm really excited about this. I'm getting the big box plus the 2 expansions. The 2 expansions are great because I had a chance to play test them. And this is a game that gets a ton of play in my house. My wife loves this game. Jen likes it a lot. And I am just so excited to get this, kind of final version of Everdell with everything that's in it. Even though I don't play a lot of the expansion stuff a lot, every once in a while I'll throw a module in and we'll play with a little bit of it. And, Danielle and Jen, they hate learning new stuff. So they always get grumpy with me when I do, but I get to enjoy it and can't wait to have this final version of it. So I'm still looking forward to it. Should be here soon.
They won't be grumpy when they see that big fancy box.
More grumpy.
Tim, is this one You play tested the expansions. Are you going to use those every time? Are you going to leave them out? What are you going to do with these things when they get here?
Yeah, so one of the expansions is a solo or co-op only expansion. And that's one that I helped a lot with. And in fact, Chrissy Pesky is one of our regular listeners, and she's on our Twitter all the time. So Girl Got Game, if you ever interact with her on Twitter, that's Chrissy Pesky, and she was the co-designer on the Mistwood expansion, which is a solo expansion. It was made for solo. You can use it co-op as well. So I expect to be using that anytime I play solo. It's much better than the original solo mode. It's very interesting, very fun. The Newleaf expansion is fantastic, but it's heavier. It makes the game a lot heavier. So I don't think, in fact, Jen and Daniel helped me play test it one time, and they did not like it at all because it added so many tough decisions. But for me, it's exactly how I'd want to play Everdell. So who am I going to play with it? Who knows? I'll definitely play with it solo, but I'm excited about the expansions regardless, just to have them around the house.
Okay. My number one game from last year is Fractal Beyond the Void. And I think this is one, I can't remember if it was Kickstarter or Gamefound. Either way, I ended up unbacking it because this is one we played Fractal Beyond the Void, and the same week we played a different
Voidfall.
Sort of space themed on hexagons board game. And also I couldn't back this one knowing that I have Eclipse Second Dawn sitting there. I love that game so much. And this game just didn't do enough differently. The combat I thought was pretty cool. You had to have these groupings of units, kind of the right, you need 2 tanks, a ground unit, and then that'll satisfy the conditions for this awesome card and this tactic will happen. And then you can upgrade these cards. So it was a pretty neat combat system. It's been developing since we played it. Maybe it's going to be the best game ever. I won't have it in my hands to find out. Hopefully, I would love to play this game if somebody else has it or if it's around. That's Fractal Beyond the Void.
I remember this one too because this Kickstarter hadn't even come out yet when Adam added this to his list because he likes to break the rules in these lists. But it came out a couple of weeks later, and he did back it originally, and then I remember he backed out of backing it. So he kind of broke the rules, but then he followed the rules, but then he cheated and broke them again.
That's right.
This is a really interesting game because this is a game that if we live together, if we live near each other still like we used to, I would have hoped that one of us backed this because I think 2 or 3 of us getting together and playing through the kind of the campaign of this, like if we could get together a couple times a week or once a week to just kind of get through a campaign of this, I think this would have been a lot of fun to explore and try it out. So ultimately I'd like to see how it turned out eventually, but I probably never will. I probably would never purchase it because I'm never going to play it with anybody that I generally play games with. But this would have been a fun one for us to dig into a little bit if we were nearby.
For sure.
Yeah. Adam, I think you made the right decision on that. It did have a really cool combat mechanism, but honestly, that's the only thing I think that really distinguished it from a dozen other games, Eclipse being one of them. So I agree with Tim. It would be fun to play it again, but for the amount of money I'm sure it cost, I think you made the right choice.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my number one, which was Great Wall by Awaken Realms, which we did a moderately deep dive into in our discussion from PDXCon just a few months ago. And that is one that I got. I got it, and the production was just as fantastic as you would have guessed from Awaken Realms, and the production was well worth the money. That was an interesting game too, but the only downside of it was a little bit too dense, a little bit too fiddly, a little bit too rules that don't actually make sense or don't actually have an explanation as to what you're supposed to do. And that, I think, left all of us feeling a little bit sour on this game. So, which is really a bummer because the production is amazing. I just kind of want to put it on the table just to see what it looks like. But without the game to go with it, you just can't do it.
Yeah, I was thinking about Great Wall today, and here's the thing about it, right? Like, it is a heavy worker placement game. But if you want a heavy worker placement game where the weight is worthwhile and decisions are fun, go to Anachrony.
Yeah.
And I got to play a fairly kind of like a medium heavy worker placement game this week called Messina 1347. This is a Vladimir Suchy game, and I talked about it on the Boards Alive podcast that I just recorded. And that was so much more fun and so much more unique for a worker placement game in a much simpler package than the Great Wall was. And I think the Great Wall tried to, put a big production on a Euro game, and they succeeded in doing that, but they just didn't make the Euro game unique enough or interesting enough to want to go back to. So It was interesting to try, but yeah, definitely not. It did not stand out for me.
It seems like a lot of competition in this category, medium to heavy worker placement. This is one that looks pretty neat with, you want a worker to have at least one other faction's worker in the space with them. That way you get to up a little benefit there.
Yeah.
That seems pretty fun in principle. And it's sad to hear that it wasn't a hit for you guys.
Yep. And that thing about you just said about the this being a crowded field right now. I've noticed also recently we're hearing more and more of these games where people are putting big productions on these mid-weight, heavyweight Euro games. So it's a development I like. I just wish they did it better than Great Wall.
Right on. All right. So before we jump into our 2022 list, is going to be our top 5 that we're excited about right now that we didn't talk about in previous years. Before we do, how many games do you guys have outstanding crowdfunded right now of all time? Because I remember, we talked about this the last couple of years, and Adam's was kind of starting to dwindle. Chris's was going up last year, and I was at a nice even 5 the last 2 years. But I'll tell you that mine has actually increased quite a bit. I'm now at 13 total undelivered crowdfunded games, which means that I've added plus 8. But to be honest, most of mine from last year haven't gotten delivered yet. So a lot of that is, just leftover stuff. But I've definitely been a little bit heavier in backing this year. 10 of mine were on Kickstarter and 3 of mine were on Gamefound. What about you, Adam?
A quick survey tells me I'm at about, I think, 11 to 12 games. I have one over on P500, and then the rest are Kickstarter or late pledges with some other weird money collecting website.
So that's about the same number that you were at last year, Adam.
Right. So 3 of those or 4 of those or 5 of those, are ones that have just, Sweet Mess and the 2 Sandy Petersons. A couple of ones I already mentioned from last year are still outstanding. So that's like half the list that are outstanding from last year or from over the last few years. The moral story is I've Kickstarted and crowdfunded a lot fewer games this past year, and I am happy with myself for being a little more disciplined.
Where are you sitting, Chris?
Well, I'm at 11 right now, but here's the thing. At least 3 of them right now funded back in 2019, and a few of them funded in 2020. So it's not like I went out and backed a whole bunch of new games this year. My list is growing, but that's because I'm backing the occasional game, but then they're taking so long to deliver. So I've actually backed off quite a bit, but my list keeps growing because these games just aren't coming.
Well, the interesting thing is that, so this year I have 5 games to talk about. Last year I only had 5 games to even cover, but I had, 13 to pick from this year. And this was a much harder choice for me because there's actually a whole bunch of games I'm really excited about. So I slimmed it down. I picked 5. So my number 5 I'm going to start with is a Reiner Knizia classic. Chris, your favorite designer. And this is Ra.
Rah, rah, rah.
So this is Ra by Reiner Knizia. I got a chance to play an old original version of this. I don't know when it was originally published, 2005 or 2007 this year. It's a reasonably simple tile laying game. Reminds me of some of the kind of scoring rules that you get from something like Sushi Go. But really, really fun. It's got a little bit of an auction, a little bit of a push your luck, and a little bit of tiling in it. It worked. It all worked really well. It doesn't feel like a dry, Reiner Knizia. It feels like a fun, almost on the fringe of party game with a little bit of strategy in it. And so I was really excited after I played the game, but it was out of print. And then this new Kickstarter came out, or it's actually on Crowdfund, came out with Ian O'Toole's kind of total redesign, new art, new graphic design on it. And it just looks so gorgeous. So because I was excited to buy this game anyway, I went ahead and backed it on Gamefound. Probably didn't need to do that. I could have just waited for retail. I think I ended up getting like the deluxe version, paid an extra $30 for, some like metal components and some wooden components that I didn't need. But the game's cool. I'm really excited about it still. That's number 5, Ra.
That's a game that I've tried once a few years back, and I didn't really know what I was doing. It seemed, I was confused. So I was like, I want to try this one again with this group. I think it'd be tons and tons of fun. Chris is shaking his head over there. Why are you shaking your head, Chris?
Yeah, by this group, I hope you mean everybody in this group except Chris.
Well, let me do an honorable mention here. This is my number 5.5 or 6, John Company, 2nd edition. That's Cole Worley at Whirligig Games. I don't know, I feel like a lot of his games are just academic studies rather than fun board games. Yeah. So I think he's a fun designer, interesting designer. So it'll be fun to crack this open, take a history lesson, try to figure out the mechanics, and learn something about the evil things England did to India back in the colonial period. That's John Company's second edition.
I should have suspected you backed this one, Adam, because you never told me you did, but you asked me several times during the campaign, like, what do you think of Giant Company? This looks kind of cool. And I was just like, anytime Adam is talking that much about a crowdfunding campaign, I know he's going to back it.
He's got to tell.
I know, I got to tell. So my real number 5 game is the P500 one you were talking about, Tim, the Red Dust Rebellion. The designer is Jared Carmichael. He's Jay from 3 Minute Board Games down New Zealand. That's a great channel if you haven't listened to it. And it's published by GMT Games, one of the most notoriously boring component-wise publishers. But the artist here, Marcos Villarreal Lara, made this game look fantastic. So check out some of these scenes. You get the grungy, kind of newly colonized Mars feel. You've got these different factions. You've got the crazy religious ones, the capitalists, the high class. You got the workers. It looks like some fun interactions here in this counterinsurgency type game. That's where one person takes an action, and because of that action, the other players will be able to take some sort of varying degree of action. If you take the good action, the other players can take a super good action. If you take the mellow action, the other players don't get such a good action. You're kind of deciding when to make your move, how to position your players. A lot of fans of this style of game, it's kind of like Robotech Reconstruction that we played, where you kind of have an ally that's not really your ally. You're still trying to win, only one winner at a time. And it's set on Mars. How cool is that? It's not some war where people like to argue and dispute the ally. That's not my jam. I know that could be fun for some people. I like this sci-fi setting with familiar factions. That's Red Dust Rebellion on the P500 by GMT Games and Jared Carmichael.
I actually ended up watching a kind of a playthrough of this. He had a prototype version of it. It seems pretty interesting, right? It's the root problem in that teaching it and learning it is going to be so heavy, and trying to understand what everybody else is trying to do around the board. Had some interesting and fun stuff going on. I would expect, Adam, at some point when you get this, we'll end up playing this at one of the BGHT cons. I think we should, give it a shot. Give a call out to Jay, another reviewer, who said, "Hey, I'm going to, put my hand in the pool." And I don't know, that's not even a real saying, put my hand in the pool.
It is now, Tim.
Like you're going to put your hand in the pool and get bit by a shark or something. But anyway, he took a stab at it, right? We criticize games, but we don't make games. And so he's making a game. It'll be fun to give him a little, little love and some attention and see how it turned out. And then we can criticize his game.
And I think, Tim, that's because we're way better at criticizing things than we are at actually creating things.
Exactly.
If I had to guess.
Real quick, this is a coin game, Counterinsurgency. It's along a series of games that have a big following, a kind of a cult following in the board game world. So I thought I should just have one of these to round out my collection from a collection standpoint. I thought it'd be cool to have one of these games. I've tried a little bit of Fire in the Lake, and there's one other one. I've tried Cuba. I know it's called Cuba Libre.
Cuba Libre.
Yeah, Cuba Libre. So I've tried a couple of those and looked at those, and they seem interesting to me, but I just like this theme a little more, and why not round out the collection with a nice looking coin game here?
Yeah, right on.
My number 5 is a game that I mentioned already because it's the one carryover I have from last year's list, and that is Distilled, designed by Dave Beck and published by Paverson Games. This is one that hasn't delivered just yet. This is the one that's due in December and may or may not actually deliver in December. But I'm still enthusiastic about this one. Like I said before, it's got a lot of fun stuff going on. First of all, the theme is cool. It's about distilling, and I love drinks. So that to me was an instant eye catcher. It's got hand management. It's got some push your luck. It's got some funky little concept. The push your luck aspect is you have to process your distillery product to the point where it's just right, but you can't make it overripe or underripe or whatever the correct term is. And I just think that sounds fun and thematic.
I heard you're a guy that enjoys a good cocktail. I would love to sit down and play this game with you and have a nice sample platter of some tasty spirits on the side, and you could go through the history of them, explain them as we're playing this game. I imagine that happening someday in the not too distant future. That sounds so fun to me.
It raises the question, though, what do you have as a themed drink when your game is distilled? Anything, I guess. I don't know.
That rum that's from
Guyana.
I'm going to bring that, and you can tell me all about it, why it's so famous.
All right. Deal.
All right. So this pick by Chris is exactly why writing rulebooks is so hard, because you assume sometimes that the rules are clear to a game. And then somebody comes in and breaks it and says, wait a second, it's not in the rule book that you can't do this. We've done this for 3 years now, and we've never allowed picks from the previous year's list on the list. And yet Chris just broke the rules and included it. But then again, I didn't specifically say you couldn't do that. So congrats, Chris, for finding the loophole and breaking the rules.
We need a new instruction manual. Paul Grogan, where are you?
All right. Well, my number 4 game, and this was a hard pick for me because there's 2 games from this publisher and designer that I really wanted to include on this list. But my number 4 was Wayfarers of the South Tigris. This is a game we reviewed several months ago when it was on Kickstarter. I don't know exactly when it's going to be delivered. I didn't check recently, but I think it'll be soon. Looking forward to it. I really, really love the play of this. Here's my only concern about it and why it didn't end up higher, because I'm really excited about this game. It's too heavy to play with the group that I play with the most, although I do have some friends in the area that will probably be interested. And I've kind of learned I don't like playing Euro games solo anymore. Sometimes I like to explore them, but I just don't get enjoyment out of playing against luck, against an automa, against a random deck. I want to play against someone else. Even if it's a solo game, I'd rather play against somebody else. And so I'm finding more and more that I don't want to just buy a Euro game because there's a solo in it, because I'm probably not going to play it solo. I'm not going to enjoy it solo. It's nice to have it there in case I really feel the urge to get it out and play it. But Wayfarers is a wonderful, wonderful game that I know you guys didn't love. You didn't like some of the mechanisms of it, but I totally loved it. I've been thinking about it ever since I played it. I can't wait to play it again. The other game I'm just going to list as kind of an honorable mention is that I also backed The Legacy of You by Garfield Games recently. That's a solo-only game and a Euro game, and I'm excited about that too, but I'm even a little bit less excited just because that's a solo only, and it is kind of a medium weight Euro game. And I'm like, oh, I'm excited to try it. I'm excited to dig these mechanisms. I love what Garfield Games does with their mechanisms and their production. And it just feels like a warm hug anytime I play one of Garfield's games, but I don't know how much that's going to get played. So, but excited about both of them. Can't wait for Wayfarers. Hopefully I can get some, you know what, I'll bust it out with some local meetups. I'll make people play it with me. This is a cool game. Looking forward to it.
Tim, I'm excited that you're excited, but I'm not sad that I'm not getting this one. My number 4 is one that you've already talked about, Tim. This is One Deck Galaxy by Chris Cheslick and published by Azadi Games. It's due to arrive relatively soon here, May 2022, which is like negative 4 months, I think. But I've been following the updates on this one, and I think it's coming up soon. So I'll be watching the front porch for a box. You've talked about this one. Nice art, fun, compact play, mostly for the solo. Is that right, Tim? But you can also play 2 players, but the solo mode's pretty fun on this one.
Yeah, you can play cooperative on it. This is just like the worst case of quarterbacking you could possibly make, because you make the decisions together. And I tried this once with I tried One Deck Dungeon, which is what this is based off of, with my wife one time. And I played a couple times solo. And so I was like, oh, do this. And she's like, why am I even doing here? What am I doing here? But you have to work together.
Yeah.
You basically combined your dice to do something together. So I don't like co-op anyway. And this is probably the worst possible scenario of co-op for me. But as a solo game, it's fantastic. It's a fun little light solo puzzle, fun choices, exciting moments, lots of upgrading, lots of like engine building in it, because you kind of build up your characters and, you know, get all these extra abilities. So yeah, fun solo for sure.
I don't know much more about it, but is it small box? Can I throw it in my suitcase, take it with me?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it'll be Age of Galaxy size box, I suspect.
Perfect. And then when you're playing solo, do you play 2-handed solo, or you just play one character? How do you do it?
I'm trying to remember now. It's been a few months since I played. I think I've tried both, and I think you usually want to play 2, but it's really easy to run 2. This is not a complicated thing to play. So basically, all you're doing is adding extra dice from the second character. So you just roll a bigger handful of dice, and you get to distribute them. And then there's like some other trade-offs for playing multiples.
And that sounds like a perfect way to kill some time when I'm out on the road at the hotel.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so my number 4 for this year is a game that was not on my list last year, so technically I'm not breaking Tim's little rules, but it is a game we've talked about. I suspect it might even be a crossover with somebody, but I don't know yet. And that is Voidfall, designed by Nigel Buckle and David Turksey and published by Mindclash Games. This is the one that we reviewed just about a year ago in tandem with Fractal Beyond the Void. And it was such an interesting dynamic there, because I remember all 3 of us going into this with this real intense interest in these games. And I think originally, some of us at least thought we were going to be backing Fractal Beyond the Void, played both of them, and I believe all three of us ended up backing this one. And so, I mean, this game just looks really cool. It's an interesting combination of Euro style play with area control and 4X, and the production just looks epic, like so many of the productions for Mind Clash games do. And so there's a lot of stuff there to get excited about, I think. It's a little on the heavy side. I think it's rated on BGG as a 4.38. So I think that would officially be the new heaviest game in my collection when that one arrives. And it's probably not one that's going to get played a ton, but man, I can't wait to get that box. I can't wait to open it up and see it and get it out and then wait 2 or 3 years to play it with you guys. That's going to be so much fun.
The great news is that when we do decide to get together and play it, whoever we're closest to at the time will be able to bring their copy. Because as you mentioned, all three of us did back this. And this is actually my number 3, Voidfall by Mind Clash Games. Now, I'm a little bit hesitant on this. I loved my play of it. I immediately wanted to go all in and back it. I had one hesitancy at the time when we played it. Is the heavy Euro going to be ruined by the occasional conflict that's going to throw off somebody's game? It didn't happen to us in our gameplay, so I thought maybe my suspicions are allayed. And I've watched some of the development notes that they put into it. And it sounds like there's lots of mitigations on it. Essentially, there are scenarios you can play in where that's less of a risk. There are scenarios you can play if there's more if you want to, but lots of ways to kind of prep for it and plan for it. But you know how good I am planning for it after playing Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy last weekend and going into the middle right and make myself a target. I'll probably get crushed at Voidfall. But the other hesitancy is just that one of the reasons I backed this unapologetically at the time was like, great, a big solo 4X game I can play, a Euro 4X game. And I just mentioned that I'm kind of fallen out of love with playing Euros solo these days. Will this change that? What I found is that playing solo, I really am enjoying solo games that have kind of a story to it. Things that are like Arkham Horror or Cthulhu Death May Die. Like those are more fun to me. They're a more fun way for me to, even Star Wars Outer Rim, right? Sit down, kind of play around in this world and feel like I'm having a cinematic adventure versus just figuring out a puzzle. And I don't know how Voidfall is going to fall in that direction. I'm still excited to get it. That's why it's my number 3. Can't wait to see this finished production. And again, I think this is one that I don't know how many local people in some of the meetups I go to back this, but I think there are going to be some people excited to try it. So I bet I'll get some plays of it in early. And this is a game I think I'm going to be excited to have in my collection, kind of like an Acrid. I might get it played once or twice a year, but when I do, it's going to be a very cool experience. And then it'll be beautiful on my shelf until I get back to it.
This is a game you mentioned crossover, Chris. Yep, you nailed it. This is actually number 2 on my list, but I'll talk about it right now since we're all talking about it. And I'll say some of the mechanisms I thought were fantastic. I want to say mechanics, but Tim won't let me say mechanics. There's no mechanics in this game, only mechanisms. The way the production, the art by Ian O'Toole just looks fantastic and draws me in. I want to get that player board. I want to slot little things in there, and that just the little noise it's going to make, that's going to be cool. The way your little tokens go up the tracks this is a Mind Clash production, so fantastic and epic every time you see one of these. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I enjoyed this one more than Fractal. I like the hand management in this one too. I thought was spectacular.
Yeah.
So we only did the one play of it, but I want to go back to this one. They're going to develop that combat some more. I was reading about that system and how it's going to be a little bit easier to follow. Really looking forward to this one. That's Voidfall.
So that was your number 2, Adam. So you're going to hold number 3 for next go around?
I'm going to hold number 3 for next round.
All right, Chris, moving on. Number 3.
So my number 3 is another old family friend. It's Star Realms Rise of Empires, designed by Rob Doherty and Darwin Castle, published by Wise Wizard Games. And I feel like there's this heavy-duty Wise Wizard and Star Realms theme to my list this year.
Why are you buying? How many Star Realms games do you need, Chris? I don't get it.
So, Adam, here's the thing. How could you not buy this game if you're a Star Realms fan? I mean, for one, it's got a legacy aspect to it. For 2, it's got a campaign aspect to it. And I think just best of all, from like I liking my components to be nice aspect of it, is that they give you what they call it their infinity deck or something like that, where once you've marked up your cards and put things on them, they give you cards that do all the different variations that you could have, so you can have an original full card without people putting their crappy sticker marks and tearing things apart and whatnot. But I mean, I just love Star Realms so much. And one thing I think that's going to be super fun about this, I'd mentioned this back when I was talking a few episodes ago about how excited I was to get the Deluxe Nova Edition. I've been playing this game with my son a bunch, and he's been enjoying it. And we haven't busted out the Deluxe Nova Edition yet, just because we haven't had the opportunity to, but I'm really looking forward to that. So the one downside that I would have, having a campaign like this and a legacy version of Star Realms like this, is when am I going to play it? How am I going to get it played? Because you really kind of want to play it with the same people over and over again. Well, man, I can play it with my son. I think he would love this. I think he'll love the story piece of it. I think he'll love beating up on his dad and having his wins accumulate over time until I've been crushed under his heel like a sad little piece of dirt. I think that's going to be awesome. And so I'm looking forward to this game. And I'm probably the most truly excited about this one, because I think this is one that once I get it, not only is it going to be a lot of fun, but I think I'll have a lot of opportunity to get it out. And I think it's going to be a super exciting experience. This one was funded just recently in July of 2022, and it's expected to be delivered in July of 2023. So that seems to be a wise wizard thing, is giving themselves about a year and then actually taking longer. But we'll see. There's no foil cards here. So if Tim's theory is correct, then maybe this won't be as much of a problem. But boy, oh boy, am I excited to get Star Realms Rise of Empires.
This is the one crowdfunded game this year that I didn't back, it was so hard for me to resist. I really, really wanted to back this game. And I love legacy games, and regardless, like I've played a bunch of legacy games. I've enjoyed every experience with them. And I asked my wife when, she's played Star Realms with me before, and she likes Star Realms. She played quite a bit of it. And I asked my wife when this was up, I said, would you be interested in playing a legacy version of Star Realms? She's like, I've been thinking about that game lately. We haven't played it for a while. So I basically got a yes, I'll play this with you, right?
I like how that translates into I basically got a yes. I
right.
Like that.
Yeah. But she generally hasn't enjoyed legacy or campaign style games. I think she feels like she's now obligated to go through them, even if she's not having fun. And so I was worried I would get this and then be starting to play with her. I'd get 2 games in and she'd be like, I don't like this. I feel like it's unfair or whatever. And then I'd be like, man, I've been waiting for this for so long. I get so excited to play a campaign game, and then she doesn't want to do it. And then it's such a letdown. And so I was like, well, I don't want that experience. But the other reason I didn't back it was because I love that they offered this infinity deck or whatever, that you don't have to ruin your cards. But then I was sitting there thinking, like, of course, if I get this, I've got to get the infinity deck. You get the opportunity to play the campaign multiple times, but they're basically sending you this big, huge box of cards that will probably rarely get used. Like you'll use 3 or 4 cards in an entire campaign out of like 200 or something like that. And I was just thinking about stuff and like how, we're just creating stuff on this planet that we don't need. And this is just more stuff. And so I decided not to, for my sake. Chris, I think if you can get it played with your son, I know that Rachel likes Star Realms as well. Maybe you guys can even get a family game in. Hopefully it goes better than Risk Legacy did for you.
Yeah.
But I think you guys will get some experience out of it, some use out of it. I wish I could play it with you. This is another one of those games that I wish that we all lived together and we could just be getting together and playing legacy games every week. How fun would that be, you guys, if we still lived in Long Beach? Why did this have to happen? Why are we on other parts of the country right now? Like, we could be busting so many legacy games out, and this would be a fantastic game to play together.
If only.
So I hear both sides of this one. Chris, that sounds awesome. You can bond over a game with your son that you're already familiar with the rules. You jump into it. Now you got story mode going. How cool is that? But you had Tim try to cut back on the stuff usage, right? Like, I don't know. Both sides.
All right, so my number 2 is Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies. This is by Red Raven Games and Ryan Lockett. And, I've talked about Red Raven Games. I like Ryan Lockett's designs. I think he does a fun mix of adding story to cool mechanisms, can get a little bit heavy, can get a little bit fiddly sometimes. And that's a little bit what I'm worried about with Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies. I'm also a little bit worried that, is there a game there? Is this an activity or is it a game? I don't know, but I'm excited to try it. Sleeping Gods sounded a lot of fun. The only reason I put it off is because I know this is a game I will play solo, and you have to manage 9 characters in that game. And that feels like too much information to be fun to me. Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies, I think he heard that, and I think he fixed it. He made it so that you're managing 5 characters. And these characters are fairly light to manage, but I don't want to just handle that much information. So 5 seems a little bit more manageable. Seems like it's a really fun exploration, a little bit of mix of, like 1920s, 1930s, lore mixed in with some fantasy. I love that type of hybrid environment and a theme. This seems fun to me. A lot of people love Sleeping Gods, and it may be a really great game. I hope this is version 2.0, an improved, refined version of it, and I'm really excited to try it out. So Sleeping Gods, Distant Skies, looking forward to it. And Adam, no, you cannot have my painted airplane marker.
I'm going to ask, aside from being a bit of a tongue twister, this game looks rad. You got the airplane in there. I'm looking at the cover here. There's a pteranodon chasing down this airplane. How fun is that? I don't know what's going on here. I do want that airplane, Tim. So we'll see if it stays in your house after too long.
I'm dying to hear how this one goes. This is one that I've debated backing, and I didn't. You had talked about it, and honestly, I'm not sure exactly why I didn't end up backing this one, other than probably I've been cutting back, and I have a lot of solo games that I'm not playing right now. But man, this just seems so cool. And I think my movie studio is also going to be putting this out as a sequel to The Sleeping Gods. What was the other one? The Sleeping Gods, and there was some
Australia.
Australia, yeah. There's a franchise here for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'll let you guys know how it goes. I'm really interested to try it out. We'll see. I'm so unsure, but I'm so excited to try it and dig into it.
That's part of the excitement, right? The unknown. So we'll see how it goes. My co-number 3 or my co-number 2, however you want to look at it, is Arcs. This is a game we tried on Tabletop Simulator. It's by Cole Worley once again, and this one's published by Leader Games. This has the Kyle Farron art. He normally is blasting blues and oranges right into your face, and by the end of the night you feel a little bit overwhelmed with all these colors. But here he's muted them down, and you're playing out in space. There's these busted up planets, and you're trying to exploit them for their materials and resources. There's these regions of space you're trying to control. You're trying to explore these planets too. See what does this planet have to offer? How can it help out my little civilization? And you're going for these different goals that revolve as the rounds going on in this game. A little bit of engine building, a little bit of hand management, a little bit of sneaky play here. It has this not trick-taking mechanism where you can, if you lead, you're good to go, and then you do it right away. And if you follow that same suit, certain advantages, you can go off suit, different advantages, or you can play it upside down for something else. So some fun card play here. I really enjoyed the game when we played it. This is Arcs by Cole Worley and Letter Games.
I was giving Chris a chance to say something there, but he's just like shaking his head in like disgust.
Yeah.
So
I've got nothing productive to say about Arcs.
This was a hard one for me, Adam, because this could have made my list. And this was what, like I told you, there's several games that I wanted on my list here. And when we played Arcs that night, this is literally one of those games that just stuck with me. I dreamt about it that night, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I even added it to my top 30 games of all time list. And we played it a second time, and I had a blast with it. But Chris clearly wasn't enjoying it, so I think it can do. And I'm not blaming Chris, but it can kind of bring a game down a little bit when somebody isn't having fun with you. But that's not why it didn't make my list. Why it didn't make my list is I was looking at the list of games I'd backed this year and what I wanted to include here. And I was like, who's going to play this with me? And it's that situation. Like, why am I buying a game that nobody's going to play with me? That's close, right? Like, yeah, of course Adam would play it with me, but he doesn't live anywhere near me. Chris is like, no way, I'm not playing it with you. The promise here, the reason why I really felt like I had to back this is because I love a campaign. I love legacy. And Arcs offers this opportunity, right? We only played the standard game, but the way the game was made to be played was as a 3-game campaign. And I love the idea of a 3-game campaign because that's a campaign you can knock out in an afternoon. You can, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours per game. So you can actually get the legacy of playing through multiple games and shifting storylines and decisions that you made in one game, how they can impact the next one in one afternoon. And I just love that. So if I can find a local group that wants to play this with me, I think this has so much promise. And I really did enjoy the game too. I loved what it had to do. And I know they're still doing development on it. I read some of Cole Worley's updates on it, what he's changing with it, and I'm already seeing stuff where I was like, we reviewed it and we were like, that was rad. And then I've heard people complain about it, and then he's like, hey, I heard these complaints and I changed it. It's like, oh, that looks even radder, right? Like, so he's improving things that I didn't even think were broken. And I can't wait to play a finished version of this. I hope to get the chance to play this in a campaign, a few games in a row with that legacy in it, and see how it plays out. Did I need to back this? I probably shouldn't have. I'm sure somebody local will have backed it. I could have gotten a game in, but I'm excited to try it. So it didn't make my list, Adam. I'm glad you talked about it, because I had a lot of feelings about this one. I wasn't sure where it should land, but hopefully it's a huge hit for us in the future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the nice minis. It's going to be a great production. With all the Cole Worley games, he spends so much time in development and iterating over and over again and getting it just right. So you're going to have a well-loved, well-cared about, well-tested product when it does arrive.
So moving on to greener pastures, my number 2 for this year's list is Lords of Ragnarok, designed by Adam Kopinski and published by the owners of Gamefound, Awaken Realms Games. This was funded about a little under a year ago in November of 2021, and it's expected in April of 2023. Now it's expected in April 2023. I think it was actually originally expected a little bit earlier, and they've pushed that back, but I don't recall, and I couldn't find easily what the original due date was. So this one may be creeping up on late. But in any event, I wish I could tell you that I had a great reason for backing this game. Like, it is the spiritual successor, they call it, of Lords of Hellas. And I should be able to say, well, yes, I see how they refined their mechanisms from Lords of Hellas, and it's in such a quality product now. But in reality is, I like Lords of Hellas. I think it's a cool game. I just find the Norse gods a lot more interesting than the Greek gods. And I don't want to spend $1,000 on the full Kickstarter production of Lords of Hellas. I had the retail version, and this one gave me an opportunity to get in on the ground floor, Kickstarter version, Sundrop minis, etc., 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 on Lords of Ragnarok, which sounds like just a cooler theme to me. And that's why I did it. And it does sound like there's some mechanisms in there that there has been some development since. So obviously they learned from mistakes the first time, I hope. And that's going to be an improved game as well. But really what I was doing was I was going into this for the production.
Chris, let me ask you a question. Do you think are you going to sell Lords of Hellas when you get this version?
I might.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting because I don't think you've sold too many games other than Marvel United. And I know we talked about games that are going to leave our collection last year, but I wonder if you even have any left your collection since last year?
No, just Marvel United. And the reality is, it's not because I am a pack rat. I mean, I am kind of a pack rat, but that's not why I'm keeping all these games. It's just that it's a pain in the butt to sell them, to go online and have to ship them and all that. And I know that I could go to a local game store and probably sell it for some small amount. And I probably will do that at some point because I'm starting to get that feeling of I've got a little bit too much stuff sitting around. I got games I never play, so why would I keep it around? But this one, once I get it, I can see absolutely no reason to keep Lords of Hellas. So that's probably a pretty good reason to move that one along.
Yeah, that's what I would figure. Probably you're going to end up with a nicer production, hopefully a better developed game because it's learned from the predecessor. Hey, just this is a little side note here for anyone in the Portland area. I just listened to an interview with T Cares on Cardboard Time podcast, and they live in the Portland area. And they said that there is go on Board Game Geek, and there's a Portland sellers local listing group on Board Game Geek, and just tons and tons of buyers and sellers on there.
Oh, that's cool.
So I bet you could probably post your games on there and find somebody that's going to take them off your hands easily, and they just will come and pick them up from your house.
Oh, that's awesome. Good tip. Thank you, Tim.
All right. So my number 1 game is a game that we reviewed maybe 6 months ago, and I've played it a lot since then, and I cannot wait to play this game, and I cannot wait to play the new version, and that's the Granja Deluxe Master Set. This game is so much fun, and I've never played it physically. I've only played it on Board Game Arena, and it's so ugly. The original production, this is so ugly, so I can't wait to both play this game in person and play the new updated production with great new artwork. This is one of my favorite games. I think this was in my top 10 this year. If it wasn't, it belongs there. I think it was. There was immediately. As soon as I was making this list, I had a lot of tough choices. I had to cut a lot of things that I can't wait for. But this game is the game that I cannot wait to get in person and start playing with a beautiful new production of it.
Tim, this is one, you're right. We said we played it on Board Game Arena. It gets better and better with every play as you get more familiar with the cards and your options that are available to you. Oh, I don't want to I can take a pig and turn him into a delicious pork chop. And then I have to take this olive and turn it into a black pot. And then I have to take this wine and turn it into or this grape and turn it into a little flask of wine. And then I'll deliver him to this part of the market or this part. You get more and more familiar with the options. You get the timing just right. Oh, I want to go on the market last this round. I'm going to save my guys for the end so I can bump everybody off and make this big, exciting play. There's so much you can do here. This game is so fun. I'm glad you're getting this deluxe edition. I can't wait to play this one.
Yeah, when we first played La Granja, if you had told me that I was going to get super excited about a bland-looking brown, green, and beige game about farming in Mallorca, I would have said you were insane. And here we are a year or whatever it is later, and I am so excited for you to get that because I want to play that so badly. That game is so awesome.
Like, this feels like a Terraforming Mars type of game where we're going to want to play this when we get together in person.
Yep,
like
totally.
Regularly. Maybe not every time, but probably this is going to be one of our regular, like repeat games that we bring back all the time. That's how I feel about it. I just love this game.
No doubt.
Great pick, Tim. My number one pick is a little more untested, much more untested than La Granja. This is Skyrise. I am super hyped about this one. It's designed by Gavin Brown, Sebastian Pauchon, and Adam Wise. Artist is Andrew Bosley, and the publisher is Roxley Games. Roxley Games have some tremendous hits for me. They did Brass Birmingham, the new version, and the Brass Lancashire. Board Game Chatterbox, correct me on that. I don't know how to say it.
I was just going to say, you're just trying to get
she's going to call it. I failed miserably. And they've done Dice Throne. They've done Marvel Dice Throne. So many great productions here. There's a few I didn't even mention. All of their games have been a hit. This game has, well, you look at the production. It's fantastic. There's these buildings. You're building a city up in the sky. It has this 1920s, 1930s barrage-like Tesla. My Tesla's going to pop up in this one probably again and have some magical skyscraper he lives in. But you're doing a little bit of math with these bidding of these tokens as you're going around. You're building your sector of the city. I don't really know what's going on here. It's a re-implementation of another game, I believe. So it has some good bones to build on. I'm looking forward to this one. Skyrise. When is this one inspected? It says June of 2023. Can't wait for this one. Skyrise.
Man, what a good choice. I'm looking forward to hearing about that one too. It looks so cool. I love that retro futuristic thing. I like the Andrew Bosley art. Man, this is just a fine looking game.
Can we just call out how Andrew Bosley has basically taken the board game world by storm in the last few years since he came out with Everdell? Like, I feel like Andrew Bosley's art is on everything. He's like the Ian O'Toole of cartoony art.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the beautiful artist that does all the landscapes? Cascadia and
Beth Sobel.
Did you Wingspan?
Beth Sobel.
Yeah.
Beth Sobel.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, she's everywhere too. What great art from her. She's all around everywhere too.
Well, I think I'm going to wrap up our episode here with my number one. And I think I actually lied before. I think I said that Star Realms Rise of Empires was going to be my big exciting treat upcoming here. But I had forgotten just how awesome number one is going to be. That is Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3, designed by... Hold your laughter. Designed by Frederick Henry and published by Monolith Games. And there's a very specific reason for this.
I'm so happy you backed this one, Chris. I can't wait.
You're just excited to get the new rule book, right? That's the only reason you backed this, isn't it?
No, although that is actually a really good reason to get excited about it. No, because what was my big complaint about Gotham City Chronicles, which I think is an absolutely incredibly awesome, immersive game. The downside of it is you need a PhD to understand the rules to this thing. And so the chances of actually getting anybody to the table with me on this one are pretty slim. Tim and I played it a couple times, and I know he said he'd play it again, but I'm not sure how excited he'd be about that. And most people aren't going to tolerate that kind of heavy rules overhead. So What season 3 does is it provides the one thing that was completely missing, and that was a solo mode. It now has a solo mode, so I can actually get it out and play it. I don't have to find someone else who's interested in it. I don't have to find somebody else who's willing to spend an afternoon just figuring out the doggone rules, which may actually be easier now that we've got the new rule book. But beyond that, this is a game that is just visually stunning. It's got this huge cache of characters. It's got everybody that's ever been affiliated with Batman. The minis are so cool. It looks delightful. The boards are gargantuan. They really make you feel like you're there in Gotham City. And the season 3 is no change. It's got a bunch of new material, a bunch of new content, plus the season 3 solo mode. And Monolith Games, I don't know how they do it, but they're the one company that I've gotten a Kickstarter from with the Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 2 that came in on time. And I don't know how they did it, because this is a massive production. I mean, I think when I got it, there was like 6 or 7 boxes worth of minis, and they got it out on time. It's amazing. Now, everything has changed in the world since then, so maybe this will be different. Maybe they'll be late on it. I don't know. But I sure do have high hopes for this. And this is something that has been a hole in my collection ever since I got Batman Gotham City Chronicles. This is going to fill that hole. I'm so excited about that.
When Chris first said this, I first of all, the smile on my face was like the Joker. I couldn't hide it because I couldn't believe he backed this. And then all of a sudden, I thought Chris might be the Riddler, because I thought he was like trying to give us a clue to something. No, he actually backed it. Chris, the fact that there's a solo mode in this all of a sudden makes sense, because I totally agree with you. That is a reason to get something like this. It is going to fix the problem of how hard it is to get played. The reason I was laughing about it is because Chris and I dug into this, and it took a long time, right? Like you said, it's a heavy rule set, a terribly written rule book, which hopefully will make it easier. But it's a very, very cool mechanism set. But it's hard from a number of reasons, aside from the wait to get in there and learn the game and teach the game and understand the scenarios. It's like it's a 1 versus many game, or 1 versus 1. But either one is like, it's a hard player set to like get people excited about, right? Like if you're going to play 4 players, you want to play 1 versus many. That's a hard thing to get done in an afternoon. So adding a solo mode is a great way to do this. Okay. After you said that, Chris, I get it now. I was laughing though, because like Chris and I spent like several weekends trying to dig into this game and understand. I mean, I remember this was probably one of the hardest things that we tried to learn together. Like we watched a rules explanation, and then we sat down and played, and we are just like, what do we do now? We have no freaking idea. So then you look at the rule book, and it is like literally flowcharts after flowcharts after flowcharts. And this is not like Wonderland's war level flowcharts where they actually work. These are like flowcharts that make no sense at all. Like, why would you put a flowchart there? It's one easy decision. You don't have to have a flowchart that says if you do this, then do this thing at the bottom. Like that's all it was. It was so ridiculously written and so poorly made. But we dug into it. We spent several weekends learning this game and had a lot of fun time playing this 1 versus 1 epic story experience. And then I thought we'd never ever get back to it. And I know that Chris has like another 8 boxes of content that he's never opened up, that he's never touched. So when I heard you saying he backed another season, I couldn't believe it. Solo mode, okay, makes sense, Chris. I hope you discover a lot of fun out of this one.
With all the content I've got, I'm never going to need to play another game again.
That's right. This should be your desert island game that you just bring this and you play forever.
And you can proxy anything you want to with all these little toys, all these little figurines you're going to have dancing around. No, that's why I started laughing. There's so much stuff, untapped stuff that you have, I think, from previous editions. But having Paul Grogan, save me, Paul Grogan, you're my only hope. He came, helped out with this rule book. That's going to be fantastic. And that solo mode sounds great. I do want to play this one, Chris. If we ever live across town from each other, let's have this one constantly set up. We'll go through some scenarios and see what happens.
Absolutely.
A couple months after Chris and I played it together a couple times, and then I follow Paul Grogan on Twitter, and he commented, he's like, hey, I just got the opportunity to work on a major game that has had a terrible rule book, and I was the first responder, and I said, it's Batman Gotham City Chronicles, isn't it? And he didn't respond to it, but I guarantee you that's what he was talking
funny.
about.
Hey, one other thing that makes it challenging to get to the table, and I think this kind of ties in a bunch of the stuff about this game. you have to love the source material. You have to know the Batman source material. You have to enjoy it, because one of the reasons why this rule set is so complex is that it is in service to these really minuscule little details that a Batman fan is going to really appreciate, but anybody else is going to be like, that's stupid. Why'd you put that in there? Why did you complicate this game more than it already is? But if you know the source material, then you'll go, oh, that's so cool. That felt just right that was in there.
I'm going to push back on that and say that the game mechanisms, the systems are freaking rad. They're so cool, but they didn't need to put that in there, as regardless of how much you love the source material. They made the game more challenging to get into it. So even if you love the source material, you're wasting your time absorbing that information. The reason why you should get into this game is because it's a cool system that they overcomplicated. They should have developed down. Think of Arc Nova and those 5 little tokens. Think of like 35 icons that you did not need to know. That's what Gotham City Chronicles does, and they could have fixed it without adding that unnecessarily overly thematic part to it.
There's a difference here, Tim. If you are, like Chris said, if you're into Batman and you know the stories and you want to play with those characters, that's
No
immersive.
excuse.
You're gonna want to
excuse.
go through the motions and see what happens, and you're gonna understand why these different tokens are out there. Whereas in Arc Nova, there's like, take this thing and add it to your guy, and there's like snake poison that's gonna hypnotize everybody, and I don't know. I can see it's 2 different types of game, right? One advertises itself as this resource management extraordinaire, build a zoo, and the other one is like, here's a bunch of plastic, have fun with it. So you know what you're getting into, and I think there's a big difference between Arc Nova and Batman.
What if you really love the source material of zoo
you're
building,
right.
and you really, like, maybe you're a herpetologist and
I
you
forgot.
really dig the different types of snakes? Would that get you really excited about Arc Nova and those little details?
No.
So Adam, thank you for doing that. You saved me the trouble of having to respond to Tim's nonsense, and I appreciate it.
It's so easy to respond to it. I stole one from you, Chris. Sorry about that.
All right. So I think that is our top 5 crowdfunding games, incoming crowdfunding games for this year. And let's see what happens next year. Adam looks like he has something to say.
I got a question for the group before we sign off here. Are there any Kickstarter games that you want to call out that didn't make Tim's list for whatever reason, avoided the rules, maybe that aren't outstanding? Any ones that arrived between last year and this year? So, right, here's a scenario where this could happen. A game that you backed between last year's episode and this year's episode that already arrived. Any games like that?
I don't think there's a single one, dude. It's ridiculous. Like, I was complaining about this on Twitter a couple months back, and I was like, why? I backed all these games to hopefully get some games coming in at some point, right? And I wasn't getting any of the dopamine hits from all of the negative feelings that go with backing a game. And it was so frustrating. And then like 5 days later, I got like 6 emails saying, go finish the Pledge Manager. So I got excited, but I still haven't gotten any of them. So no, I haven't. Like, I understand it though, right? I mean, like, things have been crazy the last couple of years. This is probably the worst time to be talking about this topic, but I have not received a single game that I didn't talk about last year. And no, I haven't gotten anything. So no, how did you guys do? Any better on your side?
I actually didn't. I don't have anything to report, but I did want to throw in 2 quick honorable mentions because they're games specifically that I backed the projects because you guys had things to say about them and you convinced me and I went and backed them. One was Motor City and the other was One Deck Galaxy, both of which seem super fun, and you guys totally sold me on them, and I backed those, and we'll see how they show up.
Well, before Adam answers the original question, then let me give you my honorable mentions really quick. The games that I'm still really excited about that I didn't talk about on this list today: Castles of Burgundy Special Edition. Let's see what else. Motor City, which Chris just mentioned, and then Arcs, and then Legacy of You. So those are the few games that I'm also really excited about. They could have made my list, just depending on how I was feeling on one particular day. But those ones I'm all really excited about.
The game I want to call out, and we've talked about it from a Long Con episode, is Age of Galaxy. I backed this one back in November, and it arrived 7-8 months later with a pretty cool little production. I know Tim's going to say, I wish it wasn't a huge box, but maybe the small box.
I backed it. That's the only real thing that I wished. I love this game. I would really wish I'd backed this game, and I can't believe you got this before I got anything else that I wanted.
Now you're missing out. And so this game, from their Kickstarter to their updates to their delivery, just fantastic. all around. I want to call out the designer, to the Jeffrey CCH, and the publisher Ice Makes Games. What a great job they did all around on this game, getting it into my hands. We played it. We loved it. I loved it tons and tons and tons. I can't say enough about how well they did the Kickstarter and how good the game is. Age of Galaxy, a screaming Kickstarter success.
My only bone to pick with them is that it's not in retail yet, and I can't go buy it right now. They better fix that.
No updates for you on that one.
Final thoughts for me is that I was right in the past, and I never should have backed any of these games. They're all going to be in retail. I could live without the expensive, overpriced production. And here's the deal. It's getting even more so because the shipping prices on these games is getting ridiculous. And I can get any of these games in 6 months to a year, probably after they ship to backers, at my local game store at no extra cost. I can get it at Amazon at no extra shipping costs. I can get it at Game Nerds with a $75 order at no extra cost. So yeah, we're basically overpaying on these games to get them a little bit earlier, or maybe to get a little bit of upgraded production. I think that the benefits of crowdfunding are going down and down, and yet I've been backing more and more. And I look back at this year's games and I love them. I can't wait to get all of these, but I didn't need to back any of them, and it was dumb of me. And don't listen to what I say, not what I do. That's all I'm saying.
Always good advice.
I don't know. I've had a lot of Kickstarter successes. Do your research is what I'll say. Early on, I was backing whatever, and that's kind of where this sweet mess came out of. And then I don't know if I would go back. Peterson Games, I feel like a lot of people got burned on Peterson Games. But, look around, check out the game. If it sounds interesting to you, if there's a small publisher you think deserves your support, if it's a low financial risk, $30, $35 to help some guy out make his game, I think that's cool. That's really fun. Where it gets risky is this like Voidfall situation, Fractals of the Void, $200, $300. You're not sure if the game's going to be good. That's a little less risk going with Voidfall there for me. I don't know. I think it's a fun process. It's an exciting process to be a part of. But yeah, you can get burned.
And all I'll add is to second what you just said, Adam, about if you like the process, do what's fun. I like the process, and I think it's fun.
All right. Well, let's move on to one final thing today, and that is that we got a really nice review on Apple Podcasts today. This was by a listener in the United States. This is Sean96ND. And the title of the review is one of the best board game podcasts. 5 stars. There are a lot of board game podcasts out there, but this one has stayed in my feed longer than any of them. The hosts are enthusiastic and provides great perspectives on the game they talk about. I also enjoy that sometimes they do a deep dive on an older game instead of always focusing on the new hotness. The themed cocktail segment is great. Thank you, Sean. That was wonderful to hear. We love to get a little reinforcement for Chris's effort that he puts into his themed cocktail segment. We talked a lot about that last weekend and all decided that we all loved it. So can't wait to hear more of those. But glad that you stuck around. Thanks for being around, and thanks for leaving us a really nice review. We love hearing it.
Yeah, thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Sean.
All right. Until next week. And by the way, next week, we have an episode covering Eric Lang's big Troops on a Map trilogy. Just wait for it. Take care, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye. There was a fly on my mic. I don't know if you heard that fly fart right there, but that was okay. It was like, I heard it in the headphones.